Hi, everyone, and welcome to Come Undone. I'm your host, Georgia Rose, a clinical sexologist and a sex coach who helps people with their sex lives. But in this podcast, I'm the one in the hot seat. Over 8 weeks, I'll be going on my own sexual healing crash course to help me get my mojo back after cancer and grief left me feeling like a stranger in my own skin. Each week, I'll have my own sex coaching session with a leading expert, and then I'll take on an assignment. And you'll be right there with me. If you've ever felt disconnected from your body, your desire, or your sexual spark, you're not alone. So welcome. This is my sensual comeback tour, and I'm handing you a backstage pass. This week, I'm joined by sexual wellness powerhouse and my brilliant friend, Billie Quinlan. We've worked together many a time before talking about women's sexual pleasure, but today the focus is on mine. Together, we explore sexual turn-ons and pull apart the sexual beliefs that have been tripping me up and messing with my erotic spark. Get ready for a lot of honesty, but also a lot of laughter. This is Sexual Rehab 101. So this week, we're joined by the amazing Billie Quinlan. Quinlan?
Quinlan.
I don't think I've ever actually said your
name out loud.
Yeah, so Billie is how I know you. And we'll be discussing the healing power of pleasure.
My favourite topic.
Yes. So Billie is here because she is like a pioneer. I would say you're a pioneer in the pleasure space.
It's been a while now.
Yes.
2017.
I know, we've known each other for a really long time.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell everyone who you are, what you do, how we know each other?
So I am Billie Quinlan, the official pronunciation of my name. And I am the founder of Ferly, which is a sexual wellness app for women, aka a sex therapy app for women, that was started in 2017, launched in 2018. So it has been going almost 7 years now. And the app itself has reached over 600,000 women across 70 countries.
That's amazing.
Won some awards, which is really wonderful. But most importantly, I think has helped shift a lot of women's perspective on their sexuality, on their right to pleasure, and given them a lot more confidence in the bedroom, which was always our intention. And it's a much better iteration than our very first product, which was a masturbation coach, which you spoke to while you were wanking.
That's quite
very
kind
innovative.
of 2025 of you,
yes,
to be honest.
I know.
Quite
we were
AI
a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
At the time, it was like, I'm masturbating. Great. Do you want more? Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, very strange product. The app is much better than that.
Yeah. It's a great app. It's amazing.
Yeah. And now I run the app, a sex coaching practice out of LA, but deal with clients globally. And I'm a soon-to-be author with Penguin in literally 2 weeks.
Congrats.
Yeah, I know. A book's called Turn Yourself On.
100% everyone buy it.
Yeah, but we met because I was a fangirl of yours because you were a real pioneer in this space, blogging about it.
Yeah, like I think we were both kind of in this space before sexual wellness became a buzzword.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I like to think that we were very like ahead of the curve.
Oh, God.
We're quite like
trendsetters.
Yeah, trendsetters.
Yeah.
Can we say trendsetters? I mean, I feel like you're a trendsetter. I'm not.
I feel like I'm the least trendy trendsetter.
I mean, you just like took off and went and did an amazing app. I was a blogger and then I kind of went back to study and then opened up my sex coaching practice. So that was kind of our two different journeys. But yeah, I think we just really bonded and the scene was quite small in London.
And we collaborated. You did some things for
I did stuff for Ferly and we saw each other at lots of the same things and we just became friends.
Yeah.
And
I think people now.
I know. But I feel like people who are interested in this always sort of get on.
Yeah.
We kind of are very motivated by the same thing.
Definitely. And it is still a niche fringe thing. I was at a wedding this weekend and I could honestly hear the whispers through the room as everyone were like, she's the sex girl. She's the sex girl. And then as people had a few more drinks, I had the new mum with the 3-month-old baby come up to me and say, my sex life is over. We've not had sex for a year. And then another couple who, again, were going through. And so all these people suddenly were building the confidence to come and talk to the sex girl. But it's still taboo, even though it's something we all do, we all want, we all engage in. So I think you have to be a bit kooky maybe to go and pursue it as a career.
Two things. One, when I was sick, I took a step back from sexuality stuff. And kind of coming back, it was a bit of a shock because I was like, oh God, like vagina, vulva, clitoris, like, oh my God, what? And I just hadn't really been immersed in that culture for a really long time. And it did feel different.
Yeah,
and it was really interesting because I think you become so immersed in it, it becomes so normalized.
Yeah, desensitized.
You're so desensitized. And so it was actually quite a good process for me to be like, oh God, yeah, it is a bit, it's really out of step.
Yes, I think that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah, it's really out of step, and it is fringe, and it is a bit of a shock, I think, when you say those words because it's not what's going on day to day.
Yeah.
And it's not really what I think people think about in depth, whereas when you're in that world, you think about it all the time.
I think that will make you a much better sex coach.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Coming out and then
Coming out and going
back
back in, because after 8 years of being in this space, literally day in, day out, I've probably lost a bit of empathy for what it feels like to actually come into a discovery call for the first time and have a conversation about your sex life. Obviously, I have empathy for it, but I think having literally just lived that experience, you really can empathize hugely.
I think going through this process as well has been really, really eye-opening about like how there's so much value in talking about these things in a professional space and being held. There's just, even I've done kind of 2 sessions and already I'm seeing shifts and already it feels like a mirror's being held up a little bit, like pressure's being taken off. I'm starting to see things through the eyes of professionals in a way that I was unable to see it myself. So it's really been really interesting so far. And also kind of preparing for this episode, I was like, oh, pleasure. I just remembered, I kind of took a while to look back at old notes and old workshops. And I was literally like running around London before I got diagnosed, like doing workshops, being like, where would you take your vulva for a date?
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Like, where would you take her? Like,
mine was to the beach.
Yeah, mine's like for a swim.
Yeah.
Or like to bed with crisp white sheets.
Oh,
so funny.
Soft, crisp, Soho House, white sheets.
Exactly. And then also being like, okay, everyone, like get in pairs and describe your vulva to one another. And just like quite like mad in a way.
Yeah.
Like looking back, I was like this real like pleasure activist, just like running around, and it felt really normal and exciting. And I was like, God, that girl actually feels quite
far away right now.
Really quite far away. So it was like a kind of bittersweet, I think, preparing for this. Yeah, I just don't feel like I'm there yet.
A reframe of that is, it could be, how exciting that you get to go on that discovery again.
Yeah. True. No, true.
You know, like you're not there and you'll never be that woman again because of what you've been through. And none of us are ever those past versions of ourselves. So that's unique to you, but also not unique to you.
Yeah.
Which I think in some ways is maybe reassuring. And desire lives when we're allowed to play and be creative and be imaginative. And you get to go on all of that journey again with yourself and relearn all of that yourself. And really, that's what we should all be doing all of the time.
Yeah.
But you've been given that kind of kick up the bum to go and do it again. So you'll never be that woman again. But wow, who could you be next?
And I think that is something that I'm realizing in this process, is that I keep on comparing myself to how I was before.
Yeah.
I should get back to that girl. I should get back to that really like empowered, confident, like I'm running around talking about yonis girl. Like I can do like an hour meditation while ecstatic dancing and holding my vulva. Like, no, I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Totally.
And I'll find this like new version of myself. And I need to stop piling on that pressure to be that person. And that's been a huge like aha moment. And we're all crippled by these scripts, all of us, of this idea, which is like, well, you should be like this, you should be like this.
All these self-imposed rules.
Exactly. And it looks a bit different for different people. And that's my script as a sexuality expert and professional. That's the script that's causing me grief.
And the biggest blocker to pleasure is performance.
Yes.
So if you're trying to be that old version and you've got a performance of who you should be, you're not giving access and space for real discovery of pleasure either.
100%. Yeah. And I think this is something I did actually yesterday, which was with the sex coach who came in, Amy, we did this somatic exercise, and I think it's something that I would have found quite easy back before. I need to come up with a better phrase for that before.
A few years ago.
Yes, that's better.
Yeah.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
Good. God, look at these reframes. So good.
It's all about the language we use to ourselves.
So true. And yeah, it felt quite difficult. And it's learning that actually small bits is absolutely fine. Like being a bit smaller, being a bit more subtle, being a bit more soft, that's absolutely fine. Like you don't need to go for the big dramatic, huge
ecstatic dance, 1 hour meditation whilst holding your pussy.
No. And I'm just really not there anymore. That sort of doesn't appeal to me anymore. That I used to. But so it is about kind of going at your own pace, and that's all completely fine.
Completely fine. And normal, and we're all going to go through a lifetime of these changes, whether it's as women, whether it's through childbirth, whether it's through living with our partner for the first time, through menopause, through job loss, through parental loss, through illness. We're going to have these moments where we become new versions of ourselves. And actually, if we stay stagnant, then our ability to live an erotic life becomes harder anyway.
Yeah.
So you're met with these challenges and you get the opportunity to move through them and discover a new version of yourself.
Yeah.
So I think, curiosity is key.
Yes,
and
curiosity.
We'll come into that, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we should discuss what pleasure is and why it's important. Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
So when I was thinking about this episode, I think pleasure can sometimes be like a very abstract concept. And the WHO define sexual health as the ability to access pleasure. It's a much bigger definition than that. But it's not just the absence of disease or dysfunction. It's the right and ability to access and experience pleasure. And I think that is a really important piece that we often miss out of the conversation, especially throughout education growing up. But pleasure is, again, it's this ability to be playful, to be curious, to use your imagination, and it's the gateway to vitality.
Yeah.
And I think Esther Perel says it really well. She says eroticism is vitality, and pleasure is our ability to be connected to ourselves, connect to our senses, feel confident and assured, and have agency in who we are. It's a really big topic.
Yeah, it is
really.
a big topic.
It's
yeah,
a really
it is.
big
It
topic.
is a big topic.
It's not orgasm. I think maybe it's sometimes easier to define it by what it's not.
Yes.
And it's not just an orgasm.
Yeah, it's not about like peak climax.
It's not about peak climax,
Yeah.
no. And it's not about only someone else's experience either, because I think those two things can get really lost in the conversation. It's often our overthinking in what the other person's experience of pleasure is and our interpretation of what that should be, and then us being focused on the numbers of getting to how often do we climax, the frequency of it, how often are we having sex, these things. That is what pleasure isn't.
Yeah.
Pleasure is being in the moment, connected to your senses, feeling your body, grounded in your body, and enjoying the experience that you're in, feeling light and playful and curious.
I think that's the mindset that you have to be in to experience pleasure. Like for me, like that kind of emotional mapping is like you have to feel, playful, curious, open, maybe a bit surrendered.
Yeah.
Not putting too much pressure on yourself or being really perfectionistic.
Yeah.
That's
perfectionism.
Killer.
Big killer. I work with clients on that all the time. Yeah. And again, that comes back to these scripts.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is what it should look like. This is what pleasure should look like. This is what my sexual expression and experience should be like. It's like trying to remove those and feeling your way into it.
Yeah, exactly. For example, it's maybe a bit of a random thing to bring up, but recently went to Japan.
Yes.
Which has always been on my bucket list.
Yeah.
And like it took a bit of self-confidence and sort of advocating for myself a little bit to go, because I went without my partner, and people were like actually weirdly surprised that I went without my partner
When
on a
I
big
do
trip.
solo
It's
trips
so
without my
weird.
partner, they're always like,
They're like,
are you
"What?"
guys breaking up? I'm an independent woman and that independence is important to me.
Yeah, it was really kind of odd, some of the kind of reactions I got.
I
I was there
understand
with
that.
friends for some of it. I was there on my own for some of it. And I was in Tokyo on my own. And I was walking around and I actually experienced what I think would describe as like life force energy, like rippling through me. I felt like creative ideas like cascade like on me. I felt like emotional. I was almost crying in some places in Tokyo. I was just like, I'm just so happy. I just felt really energized and alive and just vital and just so like, it wasn't even like happy. I just felt like buzzing. And I felt like self-pleasuring kind of quite spontaneously for like the first time in ages. And I was like, wow, Japan, welcome.
Hello.
Maybe this is where I need to be. And I kind of reflected on that for this podcast. And yeah, okay, you can be like, oh yeah, she just went on holiday, fine.
No,
but it wasn't. It was almost like when I got diagnosed, this is context, when I got diagnosed, I cried lots because I was like, I never went to Japan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really weird reaction. And so I had like a bit of a bucket list, and I've never really done that before. I've never been very like, oh, I really want to do these things before I die, nothing like that. But yeah, I really want to go to Japan, and I got a dog. Those are two big things.
Yeah.
You know, it was about like advocating for myself, being agency, being like, yeah, I am going to spend this money and take myself on this trip of a lifetime.
Yeah.
I'm plugging into my needs, plugging into my desires, being like, yeah,
you're honoring
yes.
yourself.
Yeah,
you're honoring what brings you pleasure.
Yeah,
yeah,
and that for me is what pleasure is.
Yeah,
but it wasn't always like that. I feel like, you know, jumping a gun a bit because there's obviously a couple of years after being diagnosed and going through treatment. But I think back then when I was really in the eye of the storm, like pleasure felt very, very, very distant. Felt like I couldn't access it. And the two things I kind of wanted to bring to this episode / session was I couldn't receive pleasure. I could give it sometimes to my partner, but I really couldn't receive. And self-pleasure felt very, very not okay. And as time has gone on, self-pleasure, apart from when I'm in Japan, is...
Let's move to Japan.
Must self-pleasure in Japan.
Yeah. Or can we just like design one room in your home, fully immersive?
The Japan room.
Yeah, the Japan room. Have the sounds of the street over the speaker.
I get into like a kimono.
Exactly.
Eat some sushi.
Shoes at the door, sushi. Yeah, exactly. Chopsticks.
Actually, maybe.
Not a bad idea.
Maybe. Yeah, I
couldn't receive.
Self-pleasure felt really just kind of couldn't go there. I can now, but it's just like I don't feel very motivated. And so I think there's lots to unpack there and stuff like we should talk about.
Yeah. Tell me though, so let's start with the receiving. What happened when you tried to experience that? When you tried to receive?
I think I didn't even like allow that. It was a block. So I was like, I can give, and we have good communication skills, me and my partner. So I could be like, I can do this to you. This is what I feel comfortable with. Like, please don't touch me, kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's that any form of physical touch?
Like skin to skin contact. That was definitely something that was very nurturing and that felt good. That kind of filled me up. And like eventually we did move to like kind of more sensual touch and could be more sexual touch. But I think in the eye of the storm, it just wasn't really there. It had to be tender, holding.
Yeah.
And I think it was just because I felt unworthy of it. I felt like a lot of shame. I felt guilty as well.
What were you ashamed of in that moment?
I think I was ashamed of how I looked. I was ashamed of the chaos I had sort of brought to our life. And I felt so guilty about that. And I was kind of going through a bit of an identity crisis, I think. Like, who am I? And I also felt like the world felt very unsafe at the time. I had 3 massive things happen, one after another, to all the members of my very small family.
Yeah,
so it was just crazy.
Yeah.
And I just felt, you know, you're kind of really vigilant and tense.
Vigilant,
And then And then obviously like a kind of big thing is that I think like my parents in the mirror just really shocked me. I felt really frightened of sometimes how I looked. And obviously I didn't equate that to feeling sexy. Like you don't.
Yeah.
And so I felt just a bit broken. And so I think that all of those things is why I just felt unworthy of receiving pleasure.
And that was in the eye of the storm. And now how many months, years are we out of that? Because obviously it was your eye of the storm and then your parents as well. So it was back to back.
So my mum was given the all clear last year.
Amazing.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Go mamas. Go you, go mama. Yeah.
Yeah. And then things started to settle. It's weird because I guess, healing's not linear. So things would be feeling okay. Then you come back and okay, But I think self-acceptance and feeling a bit more confident and reclaiming my image was a massitive one.
And how did you do that? Like, what have the steps been that you've actually taken to do that? Because I think that's really powerful to share. Because it's quite easy to say, well, now I self-accept. But there was a journey that you've been on to get to that point.
It hasn't been as empowering as all that. It's actually been a bit kind of, and I feel shame around it. Like I talked about it a bit in the first episode, was I think all the things that I know as a sex coach of what to do, like mirror work, I couldn't. And it was actually when I started to, when I felt a bit more familiar in the mirror, it's actually, I felt more self-accepting.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not as empowering as I would want that story to be honest.
Let's unpack that a little bit though, because what does that mean for you, especially as a sex coach, sharing that story authentically and in your full truth? Where's the shame coming from there?
I just feel a lot of shame that I conformed to beauty standards. And this is something that I work with my clients with and really encourage them to untangle that and feel worthy. But I think like there is a medical layer to that. Like my appearance was stripped of, it was created because of like a deep trauma and like a big illness, like a disease. So it is different. In the first episode that I did with Katie, she sort of made me see that as well. So it's not as black and white.
Yeah. But also what you shared there is you didn't recognize yourself. So is it you're conforming to beauty standards, or is it just a complete loss of your identity and who you were physically as well as all the other? But actually you're coming back to, I now recognize this person in the mirror again, which is very different to what you're working with your clients.
Yeah, it's true. Now I've unpacked it more. You're right. You are completely right.
It's also so empowering. I know we're slightly getting off the topic of the pleasure, but it's also saying out loud these things that we're ashamed of are unbelievably powerful for the people listening that also hold that shame, because there are going to be things that we don't like that are universal experiences, right? And sometimes it takes us saying them out loud for people to feel like they're being accepted and can then also move through that shame. How amazing that we can just name it.
Yeah.
And we can just talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful for your clients.
100%. Yeah. I think, very back to your point, I think once I started feeling a bit more familiar or accepting of the reflection in the mirror, that was a bridge back to confidence and to wanting to receive pleasure. And then also just sort of processing and grieving and coming to terms with what had happened and maybe accepting the experience and coming back to pleasure.
And when you say receiving pleasure, because we've talked about pleasure and we're talking about it sort of confined to the bedroom a little bit.
Yes.
So when you say receiving pleasure, is that just sexual pleasure? Or was it that you were unable to receive pleasure more broadly in all aspects of your life? Were you able to give yourself the care and love during that period? Or did you feel that unworthiness stretch outside the bedroom and actually find it hard to receive pleasure across different aspects of your life?
Very interesting question. I actually think I was very good during treatment at giving myself little treats and having things to look forward to and like really looking after myself with like quite exquisite care. Yeah,
love.
it was probably like the most kind I've ever been to myself. But you know what? Cancer really helped me with my own sense of self.
In what way?
You stop giving a shit about a lot of stuff. You really do.
Yeah.
I kind of used to joke that my third eye was open throughout treatment and I just could see everything. I was like, this does not matter.
This is bullshit.
This is what matters. Yeah, like, it's like an ego death.
Yeah.
Like it melts and you can just see things so clearly.
Wow.
And that's how I felt, at least. And that was like one of the good parts of that experience. And also when your parent dies as well, like, again, like so much of the bullshit just gets swept away. And you learn lessons. I'm way less people-pleasing.
Great.
Way less of a perfectionist.
Great.
And then sometimes in my head, I'm like, why are you worried about this? You had cancer.
Yeah.
You went through treatment.
Yeah. You survived that.
Like, who cares?
Yeah.
It's a kind of nice
freeing
thing to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then coming back to like your pathway of receiving pleasure and that journey. So you were quite good during your treatment at actually giving yourself little acts of pleasure, but it was in a sexual context through that lack of worthiness, the shame that you held around it. And then as that self-acceptance and that vision of yourself started to become something you recognized in the mirror again, it became easier to receive pleasure. But you mentioned that Japan was a time where you felt that real life force energy really connected to that sexuality again and the spontaneous desire. So where are you at now with self-pleasure? And you mentioned before at the beginning of the podcast, you used to do quite big practices around that.
Yeah.
And now you're feeling less motivated.
Yeah.
Where are you at now with both your pleasure outside of the bedroom, because you're not in cancer anymore?
No.
Have you maintained those pleasure practices? Are you still being kind to yourself in that way? And how is that translating into your receiving pleasure? And what does pleasure mean for you now in that sexual context? There's a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. So I think I'm pretty good at giving myself pleasure. And if I can tell if I'm putting too much pressure on myself or, you know, when those kind of old, I would say like inner critic-y things come, I'm quite good at recognizing it and adjusting things. Just being like, no, like I'm not going to work this weekend. I don't want to. Like, I'm not going to look back on my life and be like, I worked really hard that weekend. No, you're going to think back and be so happy that you went to that party or you spent that time with your family. Like,
you went outside.
Exactly. Like that is honestly what life is about. So I would say that sexually, with self-pleasure, it's just something that I'm not massively motivated. I would say sometimes avoid. But then I've started to question two things. One, how important is self-pleasure? How important is it? Because obviously there are people who are such massive proponents of it in the industry and think it's like this like meditation of self-love. It is the bedrock of our sexuality. So if you're kind of avoiding it, then, you know, what does that say? But two, in my head, what I think of self-pleasure is, again, that sort of a couple of years ago, which was like these like big, it was like a ceremony. A ceremony. And I'd put all this time aside and it was this whole kind of tantric thing. And so maybe that's why I'm finding it hard, because that's what's in my head.
Rather than just a little bang with yourself.
Exactly. Which is actually quite, that feels accessible. But it's these like massive, huge tantric, like I'm the goddess.
That's interesting. So So a couple of things. I think self-pleasure is not, in my opinion, the be-all and end-all. What struck me there was the word avoiding. So I don't have these big, elaborate self-pleasure practices. It's just never been something that I've ever done. I've tried it and it just doesn't connect and really resonate with me. I'm not against it. If someone connects in that way, brilliant. Just like I'm not against different people's spiritual practices. Again, if that's what they connect with, brilliant, that's welcome. It's just not what I connect with. So we have different ways of accessing this, right? But the word avoid is interesting because I don't avoid it. There's no part of me that's like, oh, I can't go there. There's any kind of shame around it. There's any fear around it.
What about like, I can't be bothered?
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Is it that you're avoiding it through any sort of fear, shame, negative emotion? Or is it just like, I can't be bothered to spend an hour doing this big, elaborate process?
A dance between the two. I would say the dance between the two. Whereas I think before I would sort of, even if I felt like I couldn't be bothered, I would sort of be like, no, this is good for you. Like, you should go do that. Whereas now I'm a bit like,
Have you done one of those?
No.
When was the last time you did one?
In Ibiza before I got diagnosed.
Okay.
And it was like, like a whole thing, lots of candles.
Yeah. We spoke at the beginning of this episode of like not necessarily connecting to that old version of yourself anymore. You went on a journey for many years to get to that version of Georgia as well, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that version of you still serves you? Does it still have a place in your next chapter?
I think it's quite interesting because I feel like I've really fallen out of love with the whole spiritual sexual sphere, with the woo-woo land.
Because of your cancer treatment, or?
Yeah, I think with the cancer treatment, it's difficult because on one hand, all the rituals I did and all the holistic things I did like really helped me. And I think if I had not had that sensibility, I think cancer would have been so much harder for me. However, I rubbed up against total charlatans, absolute quacks. Don't listen to doctors. Don't do chemo. It's all a ruse. It's you caused this. You have to do your emotional clearing. You have energetic blocks. Don't do treatment. Don't trust those people. It was actually quite frightening.
Yeah.
And I had to sit with myself and be like, right, who am I? What are my beliefs? What are my values? Am I going to trust this oncologist who has loads of awards and has dedicated his life to research? Or am I going to listen to that coach on Instagram who I don't really know? And so I watched Apple Cider Vinegar recently.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I just like howled throughout the whole thing. I found it such a difficult watch.
Yeah.
And so yes, that was the beginning of my falling out of love with it, and then just starting to see patterns within that world.
So that, and you mentioned there like sexual values and who am I? I think as you're entering this next chapter, and we talked about the previous sexual scripts and constantly comparing yourself to old Georgia sexually, you get an opportunity to really look at your sexual values and who am I as a sexual woman again through this new lens. Have you done that piece of work? Like, would you be able to say what your sexual values are as 2.0 or 3.0 Georgia?
No, I haven't done that work. That's new.
Because that could be a really interesting exploration. Like, who do you want to be? What does sex in this new era mean for you? And that might unlock an element of that gateway to self-pleasure. Because in Japan, what was your self-pleasure practice? I
bought a mini vibe.
Yeah, love.
And then just sort of, it was quite like, quick and dirty in a hotel room.
Yeah. And did it feel good?
Yeah.
Did it feel pleasurable?
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be these sort of like high, I don't know, it was almost like high church.
Yeah. Going to the sermon of sex. But yeah.
Because it's just such a huge pressure.
Yeah.
It's just like a massive pressure.
Yeah. It was also time consuming.
Yeah.
But I think it's about coming home to who you are. And you're allowed to evolve and be a different version of yourself today. And that's the message here. I think that's like what we've said a few times through this podcast. You were a version and you've gone through this hugely traumatic life phase, which has brought you back to yourself in a different way. And now it's a look at that and say, well, I've applied that to my medical lens and how I wanted to care for myself through treatment. How do I want to embody that as a sexual person now? What does that look like? And how do I give myself permission to let go of that previous version and all of the sexual acts and sexual experiences and ways of being, and go into this next phase with curiosity and rediscovery of, well, what does feel right? I don't have to do a masturbation and self-pleasure practice like that, but maybe I could also try it without any expectation and see how it feels and acknowledge the bits that feel good, the bits that don't feel good, without the commitment to doing the full practice and going all the way through with it and feeling any negativity if it doesn't land with me. And instead, it's just a curious exploration into what parts do land and what parts don't land. And I think the piece that you mentioned there around the avoidance and the fear of, and the kind of like noise that you gave, there will become a point, I feel, that you'll need to go there again just to confront what's there.
Yeah.
And release your worst fears around it. Because what are your worst fears of doing that? Like, what is the thing that's stopping you from going there?
It's probably still feeling a bit unsafe in my body, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was talking to Amy last week, kind of talking about the nervous system and talking about that freeze response, that survival mode that I was in for so long. So I think there might be like a somatic element on top of that kind of perfectionistic part of it as well. And kind of maybe feeling like, maybe grieving even, going back, like grieving that
version of
me, being like, it's different now. And I just don't think I've actually given this any thought. So you're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
You're good. You reflect. Honestly, my belief is the coach can only be good as the client.
That's nice.
Honestly.
Just tell clients.
Yeah, I believe it. It's like you can only go as far as your client is able to go and is able to be reflective. And vulnerable. And you are. And you're asking the right questions and you're looking at the hard things. And so if we were to explore for a moment what your new definition of pleasure might be, what do you think that would be for you today?
Taking away pressure. That would be so much pleasure for me.
Yeah.
Just like removing it.
And what pressure do you need to remove?
That script of you have to go back to how you were.
Yeah.
Go back to that girl, that big girl, the sex goddess.
Yeah, you're still a sex goddess.
Yeah, I know. This is just I'm a different sex goddess now. I'm a sex goddess who spills everything out on a podcast.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I need to remove. And when you're talking about that curiosity thing, it's like the idea of being a bit of like a sexual detective.
I love that, yeah.
And I haven't really thought of that. I think in my head, I'm like, I have to do the mirror work, which felt really difficult. Like I have to go back to like sensuality, where actually just what am I drawn to? Go and explore that. Yeah, I think this has been incredibly eye-opening. Yeah, I want to be a sexual detective now.
Be a sexual detective.
Yeah.
And if you could think about, and I think this is a bigger exercise, but if you could think about 3 values that you might embody in this next chapter, what might they be?
Curiosity. Maybe like self-kindness.
Compassion. Compassion.
And what did I say before? Curiosity.
Playfulness, maybe? Does that feel right? No?
No.
Okay.
I think playfulness still feels a little bit out of reach, weirdly.
Okay, interesting.
Because playfulness almost feels like independent, whereas I think I'm really benefiting from this guidance and like being held. And almost playfulness feels like that comes from a slightly more liberated place, whereas curiosity feels a bit more held.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say, yeah, curiosity, self-compassion, and letting go. Letting go.
Vulnerability?
Not even that, just like releasing.
Yeah. Okay.
Releasing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a value, but
I think it can be.
Yeah. I think
set your own rules.
Yeah.
We're releasing the scripts. We're releasing the rules. Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Curiosity, self-compassion, and letting go.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice.
Billie.
Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really coming away with so many gold nuggets. Gold nuggets.
It's all you, babe.
Well, it's all you.
It's all you.
Thank you so much for holding this space. And this was like a proper like coaching session. So thank you so much.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, really, really got so much
it's so
from it.
funny when we I think seeing our journey through the lens of someone else can be really empowering sometimes. So my reflection and like mirror back to you is I just see this incredibly brave, courageous woman who is already curious. You're already embodying that value so much. And I think it's such a kindness to give the world this podcast. Really, I do.
Thank
because like allowing someone to see the vulnerability of your journey and your own exploration is healing for you, but it's healing for so many people. And I just think it's so fucking cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think
some people look worried when I tell them about it. They're like, "You're doing what?"
No, because I think this again is reducing sex to like the physical act of sex. And sex is a living, breathing part of who we are. And what you experienced in Japan is a coming back to your sexuality, is a coming back to that woman that feels alive and free and has agency over her body, her experiences. That is sexuality.
Yeah.
And you've just had a flavor of that again. And it's like, let's pocket that up. Let's bottle that up and figure out what were the components. And if it's a quick, dirty little fuck with yourself in a hotel room and a vibe, like, great.
Yeah.
Why should that be shameful or seen as taboo? It's like the most natural and gorgeous thing. You can give yourself pleasure. We have 8,000 nerve endings on our clitoris. Our bodies are designed for pleasure.
It is.
Sex is our birthright.
Yeah.
That's fucking sexy. It's fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's a knowing of yourself.
Yeah.
And like what we've discussed here today is like, who are you now?
Yeah.
It's like getting to know yourself again.
100%.
That's fucking cool.
Thanks, Billie.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Great. So nice to see you.
I've loved this.
I've loved this so much. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
I'm sad it's finishing.
I know. We've got the flashing light of like, time is up.
Get out.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you so much. And now stick around. I'm heading into the assignment next. As you know, I'm bringing you guys along for the ride, and I'll mic myself up and you're going to be able to hear snippets of what's going on in the assignment as well as my reflections. The whole point of this project is to be as immersive as possible and to really show you what the sex coaching process is all about. So here we go. Billie and I were so involved in our conversation and loving each other up so much that we actually forgot to cover the assignment. So I've since spoken to Billie, and what we've decided is that I'm going to do a little letting go ceremony, which is something that I actually prescribe my clients to do all the time. And a letting go ceremony is when you burn the things that you want to let go of, the things that are no longer serving you, the things that are keeping you stuck. And it's a kind of physical representation of letting go using fire. The way I'm going to do this is that I'm going to go all in and I'm going to build myself a little fire in my garden using a fire pit that I've got. So it'll be safe. It will be safe. And I have 3 strips of paper here with me, and on them I've written down the things that I want to let go of. So one thing I want to let go of per piece of paper, all of which is related to the stuff that I talked about with Billie in our session about sexual scripts and letting go of all that pressure of comparing myself to the past. And I'm going to say those things out loud, and I'm going to throw them into the fire, and I'm going to watch those flames gobble them up. And hopefully it'll be a symbolic physical release of the old so that I can welcome in the new. All right, I'm going to put them in. So I am letting go of old versions of myself and letting go of comparing myself to her constantly. I'm letting go of piling on all the pressure on myself. And I'm letting go of self-imposed rules that I should go back to big practices and previous preferences in order to be sexual. Ooh, and I go. I really like that. I love a little ritual. I'm a big fan of them. I always have been. I love how they create weightiness and meaning, and that kind of building of the fire, the act of burning the paper. It felt like I was symbolically declaring a new chapter and setting new intentions. It was almost like drawing a line in the sand or a line in the fire. And yeah, watching the flames burn the paper and the paper turn into ash, it just felt like this external manifestation of the transformation I want to make and letting go of the things that no longer belong to me. So yeah, really like that. I feel like it kind of creates a threshold when you do a ceremony like that, you know, a moment that says, that was then, this is now, I'm moving forwards. So yeah, forwards we go. I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Come Undone. If you're feeling inspired to explore your sexuality, whether after a big life event or simply because you feel disconnected, head over to my website. You'll find the details in the description, along with a workbook I've created to go hand in hand with this podcast. It's designed as a stepping stone to help you reconnect to your body and your sexual spark.